to all 6 billion humans without insulting any faith, political belief, sex, customs. I mean, when you take something that's going to unify an entire planet because it's correct, remember, no one ever went to war over a math problem, and all 6 billion humans use the same mathematical syntax. But how many different languages? You've got 5,000 different religions, you've got 5,000 different languages, and it keeps everyone divided, called Babel, where even though they have all this Babel for 8,500 years, they still use the same math problem, and they don't fight over it. So by bringing communication skills down to a math problem, we remove the ability of an individual to lose his temper or maintain an argument. And with that said, you got a question?
Yeah, I didn't want to interrupt. Maybe preempting this a little bit here now, but if the syntaxing is or can be considered such a threat to the status quo,
the illusion, yeah, to the fiction, right?
Entity, how come you're still around and it's still around?
Every seminar that question's been asked at all 940 seminars. Why am I still walking around? Well, that's an easy question. Now, I believe in the time-space continuum. I mean, we had a past. Everyone's been around for 50 years, 60 years now, right? And if we said to you 50 years ago what was going to happen today, 50 years in the future, would you believe 50 years was going to be here from the past? Do you believe that the Earth will be here 50 years from now? Well, we can only hope, right? Nobody knows what the future is. Nobody knows what the past is. But then, look at where we came in the last 100 years with technology. I mean, this little unit here has more memory capacity and does more gadgets than every household computer just 5 years ago. And that's a little handheld device. We watch TV on it, communicate with everything. In December of 2009, the biggest computer capacity in microcircuitry was 200,000 transistors to a head of a pin. In January 10, it was 2 gigabyte, 2 billion transistors on the head of a pin. And where's it going to be down the road? Well, a 1/4-inch green holographic laser in quartz crystal will create a 600 gig RAM with a 64 terabyte hard drive. And that's only a 1/4-inch quartz crystal. Make it bigger, and you can exponentialize itself. How small is small? How much information can you fit into a tiny area? How much information can you write on the electron of a hydrogen atom? You know, and then recover it to build technology of such things. So my thing is that people in the future, through technology, if man does get to a certain point, will eventually break the time-space continuum and be able to time travel. Now, if syntax in communications is responsible for the future of mankind on a timeline of 1 million timelines, and only the timeline of correctness will get to that future. And that future is where the timeline is certified. That timeline will have to guarantee that syntax in the creator of the math interface stays safe and brings this program to its full conclusion. So if anybody tries to kill me, they're just going to come back before. And they're going to remove that individual. Mom and dad won't meet. Instead of making a left-hand turn, he's going to make a right-hand turn, never meets his wife, doesn't create the seed that creates the person that commits the suicide. You get the point? In other words, the possibilities, I make the statement, the person that would harm me doesn't exist. Because the success, give me an idea. I'm 18 years old, and I'm out rabbit hunting with my brother. I'm leaning up against an oak tree, and I'm playing with a 20-gauge shotgun shell, and I dropped it. Well, as I bent over to pick it up, a 30-30 slug split the back of my jacket open, buried itself in an oak tree. Did I drop the pen, or was it knocked out of my hand? How do you change the time-space continuum? without changing the time-space continuum and disrupting things. Or I'm sitting in my office and there's a shift. And you're looking at everything, but everything shifts just slightly, maybe just an inch. But it happens like that. And then you look at your watch and 5 hours has gone past. Where'd the time go? What happened in that space? Did my house blow up? Was I killed? Did they reset the clock, but they missed it by just a second? Enough that my consciousness would be aware that there was a change? And you have that happen hundreds of times over the last 30 years. And you start asking questions that I'm being watched. There's events that take place. I've missed so many planes at the airports. And every time I miss a plane, I'm sitting next to somebody who I would have never met, who missed their plane, who I would have never met. But that person is relevant to the time-space continuum of bringing information out in the world. Just like I told you the story about Mrs. Helm. Any of you remember the Freeman standoff in Montana in 1995? There was over 100 FBI agents trying to make these guys surrender and come off their land. The Freeman standoff. Right after, and then after that, Ruby Ridge took place. I was the guy that wrote the lawsuit against Peterson, Clark, and Schweitzer against 100 FBI agents for breaking. And the compound that these guys were in was a hole in the United States. It wasn't the United States of America. It was an old Indian treaty that was never brought into the country, and they lived in a hole, and the FBI couldn't trespass into that hole. And one of the things that no one knows about, the military brought in two 108 howitzers, put them in a gravel pit 125 feet deep, evacuated everyone for an area of 8 miles around the gravel pit. The military did. The gravel pit was located roughly 40 miles from the compound. The intention was that they were going to throw 2 shells 20 miles up in the air at midnight, dark of the moon, and they were going to fall down and blow a hole 100 feet wide and 50 feet deep on top of the compound. End of the story. I was called up when I was in Hawaii to come and get these guys out safely. So I sent in a 6-hour audio tape, just a cassette, explaining syntax to these guys. And they came out dancing and surrendering to the FBI because they knew there was no rules, regulations, or codes once they saw syntax. They didn't get, my job was to keep them alive. The shells never went off. Everything got bottled up and taken away. We had enough people that witnessed the cannons being placed in and what the rules and regulations were, how they were going to eliminate the threat, which never took place. So there was cause and effect. And when I was supposed to do a radio broadcast in Cat Creek, Montana, all 4 radio stations were dynamited. Just moments before the broadcast was to take place. So we called up a radio station 250 miles away on telephone, and we still did a 2-hour broadcast explaining syntax and how the FBI had no rules, regulations, or codes to invade where they were and what the treaties were. These are all different events. These are one of just hundreds of stories I have of events where I've interfered with around the world when I travel and saved people's lives. And I could burn up the whole seminar telling you stories about things I've done in lawsuits and saving people's lives, but that's not what we're here for today. Now, during break, we had a little discussion. I told this young lady that at all my seminars, I do this. I'm going to define the word God. Everybody goes, how can you take religion, and everyone in this room has a different faith, and talk about religion in a mixed community? Okay? There's a thing that we use a triangle to explain this. We all want correctness. Because this here is your truth. Now, when you believe that you are correct and you have truth, you will make contract. And as you are all taught throughout your entire life, you will always honor those contracts you make. And there you find your God. Okay, now, so what is God? Well, God is we all want to know who the Creator is. We all want to know what the origin is of our beliefs. Every person in this room has 1,000 independent definitions. You've read books, you've talked with your parents, your friends, your relatives, your church, you've explored your own dreams as who God is. So everyone in this room has an independent 1,000 different definitions to fulfill these 3 terms to come to what this definition is, and it's unique to you and you alone. And no matter, you can go to any church, and the minister is going to tell you one definition, but then if you ask, what did this man say to me just now? What did the priest say, or the minister, or the rabbi say? And you're going to get 100 different definitions of what people heard, because they are using their own life experience to do what's called subjective interpretation of what was just said to them. Now, it says in all the religions that God created man in his image. And the synonym of image is imagination, creation, art. And so all the terminologies that you absorb throughout your life are to define one thing: the difference between good, which you classify God in creation, and evil, which is destruction, and bad things. You have to learn about bad, and you have to learn about good. It's called perspective. So you know the difference between right and wrong. We choose to be good because it's a better form of life. Those that are bad and don't live in our society as bad, we put them in jail, and they get penalized. So we spend our entire life searching for one definition of this word. And everyone, all 6 billion humans on planet Earth, have a different 1,000 definitions than the person standing next to them. And it's unique to you and you alone. That's what your faith is. And all the stories that I am told as to what this word is defined at, I have never heard 2 stories the same in all my travels and all the people I've talked with. So your ability to read, understand, subjectively translate information in your mind and come up with a conclusion to be good is what you have to do when you look in the mirror in the morning and you say, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I'm going to be good. I'm going to be an honorable person. I'm going to do what I'm supposed to do. I'm going to love my children, take care of my family, and I'm not going to go out and do evil and hurt people. And that's basically the bottom line of where we are. So who is God? God is the creation of your thoughts and the information you have. Hold a thought in your hand. Show me the 3-dimensional object of a thought. Hold God in your hand. Show me the 3-dimensional object of your God. It comes from your thought and all the information that you have absorbed. What we're doing here in syntax is we're showing you that the Bible is written in the Quran, in the Jewish Bible, and all of these different communications worldwide are written in adverb verb. They've left the words out. Why do they leave the words out? Because they can control you. So by learning syntax, you can go back and put the missing words in. In now time, you can remove the prefixes and the suffixes, which are the past and the future, and go to the root words. Then find a root word that means now time information, not the future, not a word that means no contract. So if you go through any Bible phrase and you see a word that starts with a vowel and 2 consonants, get a book of synonyms, look up all the synonyms, and go ahead and list those down and put those in, and then put the correct prepositional phrase in front of that word. You will learn how to build a sentence correctly from that phrase. Now, in my books and on my website, I have the Lord's Prayer. And the Lord's Prayer has been syntaxed. One of my students stands up and says, I don't like the way you wrote that. I says, good, here's a book on synonyms. Replace any noun you want in the Lord's Prayer with any other synonym that is coordinated with that, and you will create a new Lord's Prayer. And then you got to read it backwards using the opposite preposition. And whether you read it frontwards or backwards, it will still say the same thing, and you can write 10,000 Lord's Prayers, and they will all say the same thing. Now, you show me a technology that you can write the same thing 10,000 different ways and it never changes its meaning. That is unique. Just like you can't change a math problem. It's either right or it's wrong. There is no, well, it's almost there, or it's almost right. You want to get down to the crux of what is correct. That is where you want to be, in a correct position. And that's why this technology scares the courts. Because no law, which is a negative condition, is the only thing that gets, and no fact is the only thing that gets tried in court. Remember, the sign says no parking. No is an adverb, modifies the verb parking, and they put a box around it. So it's an enclosed area and can't be considered because it was a lie in the first place. And no is a negative condition, so how do you no park? You can't create a negative condition of state. Where's my fact? How can I pay a fine for a no fact? Well, I'm going to use a Federal Reserve note. Re meaning no is serve. So I have a negative condition of payment for a negative condition of violation and a negative condition of court for a negative condition of law. So therefore I have one condition of nothing. So therefore it's voluntary compliance. And to make sure you volunteer to comply with negative, we put a gun to your head and say, choose. Right? You've all been there and done that. Everybody's got a parking ticket at least once in your life. If you guys have such things here in Australia. But that's my terminology of finding out what you know about what the difference between good and evil is. There's 5,000 names for God. But there's an infinite amount of ways to subjectively interpret how to get to that belief. But the bottom line is, you're either good or you're evil, right? You got two choices. It's a plus and minus. There is no gray area. There is no stand in the middle and be zero. I did a theology seminar for 47 ministers from 16 different religions. One man stands up and says, I'm an atheist. And of course, all the other ministers, they do the little hum, you know. I'm going, yeah, but in the morning when you wake up, you stand in front of a mirror and you say, I believe in me. I don't believe in anything else in the world. I says, while you're believing in you, I says, do you have specific rules and regulations that you're going to conduct yourself as an atheist? He says, yes. I says, and you go out there to be a good person, aren't you? He says, yes, I am a good person. And you know the difference between good and evil, don't you? As an atheist, he goes, yes, I do. I said, well, guess what? You made a choice between good and evil. You have faith. I says, your faith may not have a definition that correlates with the other 47 men in here, but you have faith just the same, and you make choices. Remember the movie Matrix? Yeah. When Keanu Reeves, Neo, is in the room with the 100 TVs? The architect. And the architect is having a conversation with him. And what does Neo say? He says, it's all about choice. And you make choices every day. Left or right, up or down, in or out. And you're going to make your choices every day to be good or evil. And if you know what syntax is, you can make a mathematical choice. You have better pieces of information to make better decisions to be good. And then if somebody with evil wants to come at you with an illusion called adverb verb, you can say, that's a lie, and I can prove it. And that's the one thing that what happened in front of Wasilewski back in 1985. Wasilewski said, you can't prove that I lied to you. I says, you know what? You're right. I can't prove that. He says, I know you're wrong. He says, yes. He says, I'm wrong. He says, but you can't prove it. He says, when you can prove that I'm wrong, he says, I'll give you what you want. And that's what changed everything. And I went out and I found out how to do it correct. so I could prove it. I have a signed confession for all 4,000 judges that I removed from the bench and 2,200 attorneys. Signed confession. That's the only way I can do what I do, and I'm the only guy on planet Earth that prosecutes judges and attorneys.
I've got another one for you.
You do? Oh, another judge, of course. Everybody has one. You know, I'll ask the question, who has the worst court system in Australia? And of course, everybody's hand goes up. And that's because people don't agree with what they know. But the judges have to take special courses in deductive reasoning. We have to look at you when you come before us, what your volition was to be here, what kind of game you want to play. Now, this is a story that happened in Seattle, Washington. The man comes to court, and the judge gets into a discussion with him, and he says, I have all the facts, Your Honor. The judge says, oh, you have all the facts. He says, you have 30 days to bring all the facts back to this courtroom to make your argument before this court. And the judge, or I'm going to put you in jail for 6 months. And when he says, well, what do you mean by all the facts? The judge says, all the facts. And this is dealing with a traffic case. He says, but that's to do all. He says, that would be thousands of pages. He says, you're the one that said you have all the facts. He says, I'm just making sure that you know what you're talking about. Choose your words. So the first thing this guy does is he calls me up and walking. He goes, hey, Dave, he says, I just put my foot in my mouth and I just told the judge I have all the information to come to court. And the judge called me on it and he says he's going to put me in jail for perjury if I don't bring all the facts to court. He says, what am I going to do? I says, practice doing handstands. He goes, practice doing handstands? I says, yes. That's the riddle. That's the solution to the riddle. I says, and when you go to court, you go in there and you pop a handstand for the judge. And he says, your feet are dangling in the sea of space and you brought all the facts to court today, which is planet Earth and all the facts. So he walks into court 30 days later and the judge says, are you here to go to court? And he says, yes, I am. And he comes in there. The judge says, well, where's all your paper? Where's all the facts you're going to bring here today? He says, you ordered me to bring all the facts to court. And he pops a handstand for him. The judge says, what are you doing? He says, I'm bringing all the facts to court today. He says, my feet are dangling in the sea of space and I brought planet Earth to court today in the well of the court. He says, you ordered me to bring all the facts. I did so. He says, you know, he says, that's the only right answer. He says, case dismissed. Free to go. See, sometimes it's about subjective interpretation. And you have to read between the lines. Okay. Moving forward, we're going to go through the courtroom procedures. Now, a courtroom is divided into 5 different sections. And most people don't even know they're in this elaborate illusion. Some courtrooms only have 2 planes, but you will have a plane. And the judge, and when I get done explaining this, I'll tell you a little story. The judge sits on the top plane, so he is removed, and he's in a box. And he has his flag or his seal on his box, which means he is an independent jurisdiction. He can neither see you, hear you, or have any jurisdiction. He is an actor in black robes. Federal Rules of Civil Procedure 44.1. It's the only place where it is found it says judge is an actor. So the clerk of the courts, however, sits on plane number 1 in most courtrooms. Up until the time I put this presentation up here and blew the secret on clerks, they then took the clerks off of the same plane as the claimant in the basilee. A basilee is a servant employee of the courtroom, which is your prosecuting attorney, and you are the claimant. Don't call yourself a respondent, because re means no speak. Defendant means no contract. So don't get involved with no contract language. So the clerk was then moved off of plane number 1 into its own separate plane. When you take the witness stand, you're going to go ahead and you're going to move yourself from the common, and you're going to put yourself into a box. And in that box, the witness cannot hear evidence or give evidence and cannot produce any testimony. So it's mute argument. The jury box is on a different plane as well. And the jury box, when you look it up in Black's Law Dictionary, says this is an enclosed area that cannot see witnesses or hear testimony. Yep. Read it for yourself. It's all been published. They're in a box, aren't they? Which is an enclosed area. And therefore, there's no continuance of evidence between the jury, the judge, the claimant, the boss of the or the clerk. The whole thing is all mute. Everybody is talking to nobody. The contracts are written in adverb verb. Nothing is being contracted, nothing is being said. And what did I tell you about what is the court? The court is the document. The Constitution are the words on the document. If the Constitution is written in adverb verb, and I swear to support the Constitution of the United States, between two people who said nothing about nothing on nothing, in a closed area of nothing, without a postage stamp and without a flag to establish jurisdiction, I've got nothing going in and nothing's coming out. How much money you got? Well, it's $275 an hour to talk, and you have freedom of speech at $275 an hour, and as soon as your money runs out, we will make a decision. We are practicing banking and commerce, and no matter what you think is happening, it never happened. Then you get to file an appeal if you don't like what nothing happened. How do you spell appeal? APP, which means no contract. And what does the word appeal means? It means the higher court will forgive the lower court for doing nothing about nothing with nobody and agree with it, unless it is something that will affect public opinion about how the court system operates, some genocide or apartheid case. Then they'll go ahead and they'll make a little bit of noise about it. And like everybody knows O.J. Simpson, right? That was a $40 million trial, and it ran for like 9 months. That was a big joke for the simple reason that they had to go ahead and take somebody and do an elaborate advertisement to the world about how our justice system works. That's all that was, just advertisement. And since then we have, what, 20 or 30 different crime shows on TV that advertise and tell you what's going on. But that's not the real world. It really doesn't happen. Maybe one case out of 1,000 they might take and run a CSI on, but most of 99% of the time they just fluff it off. They don't have time or money to go ahead and chase it. So it all comes down to who you are, what you know, and what you put on your documents that come into court. I can write on a document, one of my syntax documents, file it into court and put one line in there, I want hot coffee on my table. Now the courtroom door says no food or beverages. And yet, when I sit down at my table, I will have a pot of hot coffee because I like to drink coffee. And I have a contract that I paid filing fees for to have hot coffee on my table, and that contract says that I'm going to have hot coffee, just to prove a point that that contract has jurisdiction in the court. Try it. I guarantee you'll get it. You say, Your Honor, so what? Court's out of order. I don't have my hot coffee. I put it in my contract. Bailiff, go get this man his hot coffee. It's part of his contract. Do it. You'll have fun. So these planes are who you are. I mean, breaks it up and creates the illusion. Now you can dissolve the planes and dissolve all the boxes by writing it in your document. Your lawsuit says there are no planes in this court. We are on a level playing field. We're going to use syntax language. There is no adverb verb illusions. And what we say is not 2 + 2 = 4. And you do a disclaimer of that. Or you do it, not a disclaimer, you do a claimer. Or closure is the word, closure. All maritime law, under maritime law, all contracts must have closure. Well, when you're in a syntax level of mathematics, believe me, you have a closure. Our documents, because we've had through trial and error, and we're up to 2,200 federal lawsuits in the last 15 years, we are at a level where we take into consideration all these different points of closure that are necessary. When the Supreme Court of Hawaii wanted to sell 1.2 million acres of Hawaiian homelands without lodial title, as the king, I was responsible to stop it. So I took the 50-page document of closure that are necessary. When the Supreme Court of Hawaii wanted to sell 1.2 million acres of Hawaiian homelands without lodial title, as the king, I was responsible to stop it. So I took the 50-page document that the United States Federal District Court in Honolulu, Hawaii, through the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court judges all went to Washington, D.C. to go up against John Roberts and the 8 Supreme Court judges and argue why they had the right to sell 1.2 million acres of Hawaiian homelands. And I went ahead and I took the 50 pages and I syntaxed them, and there wasn't one legal sentence in the entire 50 pages. It was just written in adverb verb. And it only took 6 sentences to articulate the fictitious conveyance of language and the damage that was caused because they don't have lodial, L-O-D-I-A-L. Location, D-I is original, A-L is contract. No location, original contract to sell Hawaiian land. And the post office doesn't have jurisdiction because they never had the correct sentence structure communication syntax on any treaty, trust, or contract with the Hawaiian people since Cook landed there in 1789. That totally wiped out all claims that the United States government has against the Hawaiian people. And so with that information, the United States Supreme Court reprimanded the Supreme Court of Hawaii that you people are illiterate, you can't read and write, and you tried to perpetrate a fraud against us, go home. You don't have lodial title, you can't sell the land. So with 6 sentences and a 2-day head start, I went in the back door because I got fast-tracked to the Supreme Court of the United States because of who I am, as a plenipotentiary judge with mathematical syntax, and I defeated them in 1 page. And if I can do it to the Supreme Court, and they have standing to take a Supreme Court of another court and knock them down, then the language that sets precedents, that syntax has jurisdiction over all fiction. And it does. So you guys have the power and the ability to go out there and use this technology successfully. Question?
Why would the court system choose to recognise that? Why wouldn't they just dismiss it?
3 + 3 = 6, doesn't it?
Don't know.
You'd be a fool to say it equals anything else but 6 because you would embarrass yourself.
Okay. Right.
They would have to confess that they can't read and write. If they can't read and write, guess what they did? They cheated on their high school exams. They never passed English. They cheated on their college exams. They never graduated from college. They never graduated from law school. They cheated on the civil service exam, which is misappropriation of their paychecks from the taxpayer, which is a Title 18, Section 641 through 664, misappropriations of taxpayers' money to extort money while engaged in criminal activity under Title 18, Section 1001, mail fraud under Title 18, Section 1341, and Chapter 15, which is the penalty for fictitious conveyance of language, Title 15, Chapter 2B, Section 78FF, carries a $25 million fine and 30 years in prison to fictitiously convey language to extort rights from a citizen. And I got your signed confession. You feel lucky today?
Are we getting a copy of this tape?
Yeah. It's not, folks, on the back of my business card is the whole procedure how to prosecute judges and attorneys. It's already written there for you. With those small points of law and the expanded definitions in my book and on my website, you can stop a charging elephant. Just take away his charge card. Question? Oh, go ahead.
When you're talking about prosecuting judges, but if you go to say, a lower level, if it's just a corporation that you might be in dispute with, different levels, like for instance, like you might have arbitration, how far do you have to take it, or how far can it go if you lose, say, the arbitration, or you might lose a district court hearing because they might not understand, for instance, what you give some of these people, they don't understand, just think, this guy's, what is this guy on? You know, don't understand.
Oh, they're going to play the dummy up game with you, but don't worry about that. When you go to corporation, you're not in the law in the courtroom. Now they have their public opinion. They lose their business, they go out of business, right? That costs money. So you sit down and you say, hey, Mr. Corporation, I just syntaxed your corporate charter, which made you a corporation. Guess what? Your charter is written in adverb verb, which means the Secretary of State who gave you your corporation status can't read and write, and you don't have a corporation. You've now sold stock to the general public through the Securities and Exchange Commission, which is a lie and constitutes mail fraud. Through fraudulent conveyance of language, goes back to a Title 15, Chapter 2B, Section 78FF, and you got a $25 million fine and 30 years in prison. How much money do I need? I need like a couple $1,000 dispute here, but you're facing over here criminal charges of $25 million. And I've got your signed confession that you messed all this up, that you got fraudulent contracts that you've given to the public, and you've interfaced using federal currency while engaged in criminal activity. I have a signed confession for all of this. You feel lucky today? Now, let's negotiate a friendly settlement here. I'll let you live, you let me live. You think that their lawyer, who carries a $3 million blanket insurance policy that they just hired to buffer them from the facts, is going to touch something when syntax? He can't even go to the judge. No judge will take the case because he becomes a co-conspirator to support the attorney, and the insurance company is going to cancel their insurance policies, which means they can't practice. They lose their job. Then the corporate is sitting there and he doesn't have any backup now. No attorney will touch the company because they're dirty and you got to sign confession for it.
What is the signed confession?
The signed confession is the fact that their charter of how to do business is written in adverb verb and doesn't have standing. They don't have a trust to run their company. And the syntax proves that they lied from A to Z, president all the way down to the room sweeper.
So could you, when you say like looking at it from a case, when you say go to the charter of the company, could that work the same for their, say, terms and conditions?
Exactly.
Of there. So if you sign the terms and conditions agreeable to whatever it was, if those terms and conditions, once again, you syntax.
Right. Okay, here's what he's saying. You get hired at a company and it says these are the terms and conditions of your employment. And then they go ahead and a lawyer wrote it, and because you guys know syntax now, you can go ahead and correct that and say the lawyer lied to the company. You have the power to go ahead and syntax the fact that these are not fair rules and regulations. But before you go back to the company, you want to prosecute them for a lie, make sure you've got the solution. I didn't come here to Australia and say, your Constitution is written in adverb verb and says nothing is a lie. I went ahead and I syntaxed it. I showed you this is a lie. It's got 200% fraud, and I wrote a brand new Constitution. I gave you a replacement that was far better than the original to give you the guarantees of your faith, your religion, freedom of speech, freedom of press, freedom of travel.
Who did you give it to?
Say again?
Who did you give it to?
It's published on the internet. You've had it here for 9 months already. Everybody can download it off my website. It's free. Yeah, we'll give it. He's got a copy. Don't think that for a second that the courts didn't pull that thing off of the internet. My website gets beaten up hundreds of thousands of times by people all over Australia. I got caller ID.
So if you're in dispute, you could syntax their terms and conditions that they're holding you,
right,
to. You would have to rewrite it in the truth and give it to them, say this is what it should be.
Right. In other words, it's proving that you have the intelligence to say this is a lie, and I can prove it's a lie, and this is what it should say. Now, I should be paid for the work that I did to write this. You know what the second highest paid job outside of brain surgery is? Contract writing. People that can write in contract get paid $500 to $1,000 an hour in syntax. And you know what? 2012 is just around the corner, and we got 400 million people now studying. When we get 51% of the vote, this entire planet is going to have a new shift in dynamics of learning how to read and write in syntax, because sooner or later, not only is this planet going to unify its ability to communicate mathematically in syntax on contracts, but somebody's going to come knocking from another planet. And if we lied to them, they're going to throw a stone on us the size of Texas moving 50,000 miles an hour, or we can have a truthful communications with another world, another planet, under commerce and be truthful, where they don't look at us as being a lying, cheating threat to their existence. You see, So there is rules and regulations. Don't forget, there are no accidents. No matter where you go, there you are, and wherever you are, that's where you're supposed to be. It takes time. It's taken 22 years now to get to this seminar since syntax was introduced to the world. And I'm the only guy standing up here, and Steve over there now, that are doing seminars. Worldwide. We're the only two guys. But the videotapes and webcasts on Skype and GoToMeeting and radio shows and TV shows are helping promote this on a global basis and making everybody aware. How long did it take for you guys to find out that Michael Jackson died? 15 minutes after he was dead? I mean, YouTube, Google, Yahoo, AOL. I mean, the entire planet, 6 billion people knew about it 15 minutes after he died because he was popular. So the world is becoming very small. Everybody's cell phone rang and said, here's the news. Everybody that was on a computer, no matter what channel you were on, it bleeped in. No matter what channel you were watching on TV, it bleeped in. The whole world knew about it in 15 minutes. Well, syntax is going to be the same thing when it goes pop. One day the TV is going to turn on, and no matter what channel you go to, all 200 channels are going to say, we're going to have a dynamic shift, and you people are going to have to learn syntax because the whole world is shifting communications. We're going to have a one world order of correctness, one world money of correctness. The wars are going to stop. We're going to have balance and prosperity. And we can do it because we're going to be honest and correct. And then you guys can go to bed at night and not worry about somebody dropping a nuke on you tomorrow because you got correctness. And that's what we all want. That's what we're all learning. Question?
I think we knew before Michael knew, actually.
Say again?
I think we knew before Michael knew that he died.
Oh.
Given the statements on contract and Lodial title, where do we stand then with our title deeds for land ownership here, given the fact that this place was never invaded or treated?
You've never had the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, treaty on any land contract or mortgage in the history of this country's writing.
So why the hell am I paying rates?
Because if you don't, they will move you off the land and put somebody else there.
That's not very nice. How do we fix that?
Well, it's going to be fixed when enough people are educated and you vote in syntax. See, right now, we're not here to break the system. We're here to educate and correct. When I did this, when I originally said to my mom and dad, I'm going to go out in the world and I'm going to teach this, they said, don't complain about the government because you don't have anything to replace it with. You can't tell somebody he's a liar if you don't have the truth in your hand. I couldn't call Judge Wasilewski a liar because I didn't know what his truth was or what my truth was because I was misled. So I had to go out and spend 74,000 hours to get to where we are today to have a correctness at a mathematical level so I could rewrite the United Nations Constitution, Australia's, New Zealand, America's, Hawaii, and anybody else in the world that wanted a corrected constitution.
So in the short term, there's nothing we can do to get
we don't have the numbers
to your own personal piece of dirt. There's nothing that we can do at this moment.
Well, you can study, be prepared, learn how to be a writer, because when this thing takes place, the government's going to say anybody that can read and write in syntax and do corrections and learn how to program a computer, we have immediate employment for you. Wages are probably going to start at about $100 an hour and up based on how much experience you have. And the whole planet's going to get rewritten. They do not, I keep getting emails, when is somebody going to write a program to rewrite the internet that fast, to go from adverb, verb to syntax? Well, like I said, 900 variables for one word, 2 is 81,000, and so on. The computers can't do what my brain does. Stephen over there can do it. Russell Gould can do it. Greg Bartell can do it. And 100 other guys up in the United States that have been trained. They can all do it and do it efficiently. And when you guys learn it, it just opens up your whole world. You can see a lie. You have X-ray vision over everything. And it's a lot of fun. Then nobody can screw around with you anymore. The cops won't stop you. The courts don't want you in there. Every time I have a court case down here that I'm supposed to testify in or defend, they cancel the hearing because I booked an airline ticket. And when I was supposed to testify, what they did, yeah, because I'm involved in a bunch of cases down here. So what they do is they schedule the hearings when I'm out over the Pacific in a plane, can't even talk on the phone. They just say, you will be here in 24 hours while Dave's in the air and we're going to hold the trial today. So when he gets here, it's all done. Doesn't change the evidence. Under the 72-hour rule, after I land, I can go back in there and nail him under syntax. Takes me just a couple minutes to go ahead and syntax the entire lawsuit, drop an amicus curiae or a complaint in court, and say, you guys lied, I have your signed confession. Thanks for all the arrows in my quiver.
Thank you.
Next question, Gary.
Just a few questions to satisfy my ignorance. Thank you,
Sure.
David. Number one, the syntax language currently is in English. Will it be in any other languages?
Yes, my website was written in French, German, Spanish, and Italian.
Any
And
others?
just recently, our bandwidth was knocked down when we changed carriers, so I got to put it back up again. But when we wrote the German version, I had university professors from Germany just screaming at me, you can't do that. You disqualified all of our books in our universities and our Constitution because you wrote that and you put it up there. What are we going to do with all of our school materials? I says, fix it.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, are you proposing syntax language to be the one language for New World Order?
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with a New World Order that's correct where nobody can go to war anymore because you all know how to do things correctly. As long as you've got two, you're going to have controversy. So a New World Order is not a bad thing, provided you have your freedoms to travel, your freedoms to communicate, to write, your faith. And then it's not going to be any guesswork as to where you stand in that faith because you're going to have a law that protects you with syntax.
Thank you for that, mate. I appreciate that. Just one final part. Is this also the reason why the Masons also want to continue with syntax language as well? Are they in line with the New World Order as well?
Yes, they're the ones been pulling the strings on the New World Order for 8,500 years.
Okay.
Now, having the Masonic teachings is no different than any of the religions in the world. To teach you the difference between good and evil, how to manage people. Because for every 97 followers, you've got 3 chiefs. It's always 3% manages 97%. That ratio hasn't changed since the caveman.
Okay.
And the cream always floats to the top.
And you mentioned good and evil on the lower levels, but on the higher levels, you still talk the same good and evil as well on the very high levels?
The syntax separates the wheat from the chaff.
Yes.
There isn't anybody anywhere on this planet today, I don't care how high up in the Illuminati they are, that I can't prove they lied. And I don't have any restrictions as to how high up I go. You know, the Supreme Court of Australia had their Supreme Court judge put on the World Court at The Hague. Guess who pulled him off The Hague? I did. I filed a lawsuit against him for apartheid against the Aborigines. And he was kicked out of The Hague because he didn't protect the people he was supposed to in his own country. And I had a signed confession, and that's why they kicked him out of The Hague. And that's why Queen Elizabeth pulled my passport here and had me arrested when I set foot in Australia. So, in retaliation, I took the Magna Carta and I syntaxed it. It's written in adverb verb and says nothing. Did you know in World War II, Hitler sent 240 stormtroopers over to destroy the Magna Carta? And 340 crack British troops defeated them. Several hundred men died in that battle. and it was to destroy the Magna Carta. Both sides thought that this was, if we can destroy the Magna Carta, would destroy the English Empire in the English world. Well, when I syntaxed it, it was destroyed. It was never there. 1215, written in adverb verb by Cromwell. Never said anything in the first place. And what they did is they promoted this lie throughout history. We wrote the Declaration of Independence. Thou was an adverb, making declare. D meaning no, clare means speaks, shun is contract. No spoken contract. Of independence, in, no. D, no. Pen, write, ants, contract. No, no, write contract, no, no, speak contract. And then they wrote it, we the people. Pronoun, adverb, verb. You can be a pronoun as a we or a verb as a people. That's why we have a verb court, a verb fact, and a verb law, because you're verb people. And when we syntaxed the Constitution of the United States, it said nothing. That's where I wrote a new Constitution and published it. They still can't take their lie and shove it down our throats, because we've proved the lie, we've proved the fact. And when you put them both together, take their lie and shove it down our throats, because we've proved the lie, we've proved the fact. And when you put them both together, choose, choice, matrix. This program is the movie Matrix. A, B, and C, 1, 2, and 3 matrix. This is the entire program of Matrix. It is the machine of government. I'm Neil, fighting for my existence as a human. And what is the virus that destroys both the machine and the people? The virus was the illusion of communications. And syntax destroyed. And how did Neil destroy the virus? He says, okay, virus. Neil represents 3 plus 3 equals 6. And Smith had an infinity amount of Smiths, which was the infinity amount of numbers that could be wrong around 3 plus 3 equals 6. And he says, okay, I surrender. Take me. What's the first thing the virus of wrong tries to do? Is rewrite correctness. And every time he does do it, it says, well, 3 plus 3 doesn't equal 7. That's out. 8, that's out. 9, that's out. Inadvertently, you watch it take place in the movie, boom, all the virus is destroyed because it uses up all its energy to prove a lie, which you can't do. And when it's done, the contract was, I can live as a human because I'm correct, and the machine can operate because it's correct, because we need the machine, and the man has to service the machine has to service the man. Well, it looks like everyone's back.
The compounding, that would be millions over 50 years.
All right, we're gonna get started now, folks. Hope everyone had a good lunch. I had a cup of coffee. Way to go. All right, we're going to go through the parts of speech. There's only 10 of them. And when you guys went to school, you probably were 10 years old and you studied about prepositional phrases. Well, when you were 10 years old, 11, 12, you were going through puberty. Your hormones made you a complete mess. And after you got done with puberty, the only thing you could think about was sex, boys and girls, you know. And so whatever you learned during puberty was totally like thrown out the door. And the rules and regulations they gave you, you probably weren't paying much attention. You didn't think your parents loved you. And you were just a mess. So by the time you got into the reality of teenagers, again, you were a batch of hormones and misinformation. And then when you finally got out of high school and you were 18 years old, you didn't care much about school. It was just sex. And whatever, to get the better the sex, according to Freud, everything is predicated on sex, and you got to have better cars, better clothes, better makeup, better hair, you know, to incorporate better sex. So you really didn't care much about the world, and that's why you're 40 years old, you wake up one morning and say, we're out in Kansas, Toto, and you want to come here and learn about why the whole world is screwed up. So we went ahead and I was the same way, but I overcame that. And these are the parts of speech. Now, the adverb is used more in language worldwide than any other syntax of communications. Now, the adverb is a modifier. Also remember a vowel and two consonants. The adverb operation of syntax is a no contract issue because you're modifying the condition of a fact. If you're going to modify something, that's perjury because it's no longer the original fact. And now the adverb creates the prejudice of your limited education or your limited knowledge to go ahead and sell your opinion or prejudice to another individual by modifying the condition of the fact in front of you. When you take a fact and you modify it with an adverb, it becomes what's called a gerund verb, which means a noun used as a verb. They explain it to you, but it's still a lie. Then they go ahead and they tell you when you went and took sentence diagramming that you need a subject. Well, SUB means no, and ject is contract. Well, you want to create a no contract in a sentence? It goes back to a math problem. The math problem is 3 times 3 times 3 equals 27, right? So if I have a fact times a fact times a fact, I'm going to get a fact. But if I do 3 times 3 times 3 times 0 equals 0. Or if I divide, it's still going to be 0. Because a fact times a fact times a fact times a lie equals a lie. There's your math interface on add, subtract, multiplying, dividing. As to if you're going to be correct, you're going to be correct all the time. You can have a sentence with a, let's say, 30 prepositional phrases, completely done correctly. And take the word for out instead of for the witness's knowledge, and then go ahead and write 29 prepositions in the correct order in the sentence, but because you dropped the first 4, now you got an adverb, adjective, pronoun all the way to the end of the sentence, and you've lost all prepositional phrases because you committed a lie to start the sentence. Therefore, you've lost everything. So you can't make any mistakes in this technology. The math will not support it. And we use the math to go and check it frontwards and backwards. When you write a sentence backwards, all the prepositions, we're going to get into that when we do sentence structuring, all the sentences backwards, you have to use the opposite prepositions. Every sentence we write starts with a preposition for. You have 2 verbs, is and are, simple enough. And the word that follows the verb is the word with. My entire book, my website, every document, every lawsuit I ever wrote follows these same rules. And we'll expand upon the sentence later after I explain this. But these positions of where these prepositions and articles take place are very unique because of every sentence is in a complete court hearing. And you got to follow the rules on every sentence, and you can't violate them. You do, you make one mistake in a whole entire document, you made a presumption before the fact, it proves you don't know what you're doing. That it was an accident, or you don't pay attention to the accuracy of who you are and what you're doing. So we're striving that don't do something by yourself. Always work as a team. I don't care, the more people you got in your team, the better, because then you got more years of experience to check. That's why law firms do not operate where you have a lawyer working alone. He always has 5 or 10 other lawyers reading and signing his papers to say he did it right, and absolutely avoided a fact at all costs. Because if you create a fact and you're a barrister or a lawyer or an attorney, you will be disbarred. That includes judges. Remember, no law or fact shall be tried. And they have to stay within the confinements of nothing, otherwise they don't have a lodial title, they don't have constitution, and now they've committed perjury through trespassing on a fact, which they don't have title to. That's why they have to go ahead and break the law 24/7. Now the adverb modifies an adverb, modifies an adverb. The adverb then can modify a verb. The adverb can modifies an adjective, and the adjective modifies a pronoun, which is connected by an adverb after it. The only word that can follow a pronoun is an adverb, or a period. When you take 2 nouns and you put them together, black pen, black is a noun, or black is a fact, pen is a fact. But black colors the pen. Therefore, the black now becomes an opinion. Is this a charcoal pen, an ebony pen, or a black pen? See, I can have, there's 1,200 shades of black. So what shade is it? And even though this is black, my shirt is just a little bit different color black. So it's subjective interpretation as to what it means, so therefore it's an opinion. Like he has a red shirt on. Try and explain color red to a blind person that's never seen color. Impossible. So your opinion of an adjective to color something or to modify something is impossible. Therefore, your opinion, presumption, modification has no bearing with the facts of what you're trying to do. So in the adverb, like we do the United States of America, United States of, all right, excuse me. Ahead of myself here. The United States of America. See, you've got the preposition of and the article the, but when you separate them, they both become adverbs. The adverb modifies the adjective modifies the pronoun is connected by the adverb, which then modifies the dangling participle verb America. I was President Clinton's counsel for the sex trial. That's why it was sealed. What is sex? What is? Then Bill Clinton says to the judge, I just showed the American people a verb is and a noun is. Would you like me to show them another verb and another noun? Let's discuss syntax publicly on CNN and tell the world that the syntax of all communications is a lie. Well, no further questions, Mr. President. This court stands adjourned. Then he says, I got to go in front of Congress and I got to talk. And Congress, we're not allowed to take my attorneys in, even though he is an attorney. He's not allowed to take attorneys in with him, and he has to give private consultation to these people. Now, there's a movie called A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise and Jack Nicholson. Some of you have seen it. You want the truth? I'll tell you the truth, but you can't handle the truth. And that's what Bill Clinton does. He walks into Congress and he says, before we get started, I'm going to explain things to you. And he makes that statement, and then he holds up a $1 bill, and he explains that America is a dangling participle verb on the money. Under mail fraud, Title 18, Section 1001 is fraudulent conveyance of language, which activates mail fraud banking. Title 18, Section 1341 carries a 30-year prison sentence and a $1 million fine. But the penalty for fictitious conveyance is Title 15, Chapter 2B, Section 78, FF, $25 million fine and 30 years in prison for every dollar published in U.S. currency. He says, I have to address the world at my union address. And I have to tell the world that America is a verb on the money and disqualify all U.S. currency worldwide. Or we can seal my case now. All those in favor of sealing the case, say aye. All the hands go up. He walks out. And no newspaper, magazine, TV, or radio stations makes any announcement about Bill Clinton's impeachment from that day forward. Who runs for President of the United States? Hillary Clinton. No one in America talks about Bill Clinton's impeachment. No foreign government talks about Bill Clinton's impeachment. Not even North Korea. For all the noise you heard on the news about North Korea and the United States, not one word about that. Who becomes Secretary of State? Hillary Clinton. She goes to Obama and says, hey, how about if I call the paparazzis in here and I do a news conference on America being a dangling participle verb? She becomes Secretary of State. Some of you know about the fact that Bill Clinton went to North Korea and got the 2 reporters who were held in prison for 4 years out. And when he was in Honolulu, Hawaii, he was on The Tonight Show, and the question was, how did you get the 2 reporters out of North Korea? I used the David Wynn Miller syntax. He was going to syntax the North Korean money publicly and disqualify all North Korean currency. Or give me back the 2 reporters. End of story. You see, so knowledge used by the right individual at the right time will create the amount of pressure that's called damage control. And so this is how syntax has the power to make changes and cause things to be influenced. Now the verb is a condition of, is your action. Now the adverb can modify the verb, and the verb, if it stands alone, is an R. Because you use prepositional phrase, verb, prepositional phrase, prepositional phrase. Because the verb stands alone, it doesn't become a pronoun because you are making a declaration, not a declaration, you're making a claim on your document that says verb is the thinking, the condition is a singular, are is plural, and you take jurisdiction for the verb is an are. Because you define it, it is now what it is on the contract and no one can change it. If you do not take that position, it becomes a pronoun. Is an are. Is used for the is. It's a prepositional phrase. Therefore, is a noun. The is, adverb verb. Now it's a verb. For the is. For is the pronoun. Is an adverb. For the is. For would be a pronoun. The would be an adverb. The first is would become an adjective, and the second is would become a pronoun. You see, I can change the value of any word I want based on where I place it and knowing what the value of syntax is. So I just showed you an adjective verb, a pronoun verb, a verb, and a noun verb. 4 different conditions of state. When I did a sentence, I'll write it over here. The is for the. I got 3 PhDs in Atlanta University on my seminar. And they stand up and say, that doesn't mean anything. That's nonsense. I'm going, well, let's put a syntax to it. We've got a pronoun modified, connected by the adverb, which modifies the adjective, which modifies the pronoun, which is connected by the adverb, which now modifies the dangling participle verb the. So I've got a pronoun the, I've got an adverb the, a second adverb the, and a verb the. 3 different syntax definitions, and I can go to a dictionary and prove that those words are found with those syntaxes in that sentence. It's not an exercise that the is for the. It's an exercise that I have 4 definitions in every dictionary of the world that says there's a syntax definition for a pronoun the, an adverb the, a verb the. If I want to put another one here, it would be an adverb, adjective, pronoun, and make another adjective pronoun. And take 4 conditions of the and show you the definition in the dictionary. And the PhDs in English now said collectively, we have PhDs in stupidity because you have the power through syntax to identify every word in the world with all parts of speech, and you can prove it mathematically, and you know what it means. And they never knew how to do that. 28, 29, and 30 years respectively as teachers, never once applying syntax to their classes, only teaching in adverb-verb dialect.
The last that, you said that's a verb?
Yeah, it's a dangling participle. It's been modified by the adverb the, which now makes this one a verb.
Verb is an action word.
No. If I say for the, it's a preposition, article, noun. I just made it an article, and I just made it a noun, standing next to each other.
Yeah, but it can't be a verb.
Yes, it is. It's a dangling participle verb. You see, this mathematical procedure is an absolute in communication skills. These are the only ways these things can be found.
So question, David, because of the ambiguity in the language that we have and the modification, you can have a series of phrases and the syntax that's applied can be different depending on the volition of the person that's doing it and the interpretation that they make. And then they would need to be consistent with that interpretation through the balance of the document. So for example, if I were to take that the is for the, and I said that that was a pronoun, adverb, then I can have a pronoun.
Adjective, pronoun, adverb? No, it wouldn't be mathematically sound.
So what you've got to do is make sure you've got the sequence correct. So if we started from the back of the sentence, we can say the is the 1, 2.
Right, now this is what he's explaining. Where do you sign your documents? On the bottom, correct? Because they have jurisdiction for everything in front of and above. Everything is in backwards. Authorization runs backwards. The first word in the sentence does not have jurisdiction in the sentence. It's the last word. The only thing that appears in front of the last word is the, and then you got to go to the next sentence, next word, and you got to adverb, verb, so therefore this has to be a pronoun. The pronoun is modified by the adjective. The adjective is connected by the adverb, which then connects to the pronoun in front of it, because there's no prepositional phrase to certify the. I mean, the word the to start the sentence. If I said for the, then it would be a 5, 6, 7, and this would become a 2, and then a 5, 6, 7 again. We'd have 2 prepositional phrases, but this is the danger of dropping one word and not starting your sentence with a prepositional phrase. Once you drop the prepositional phrase, you create an illusion. And like I said up here with math, a lie times any truth is still a lie. And that's what happens down here. What do we have here? We have a pen. In order for you and I to communicate, we first have to have an object that we both understand. We assign it an alphabet, the English alphabet. Could be the Russian or any other alphabet, okay, but you and I choose English. 26 letters, we're going to spell this P-E-N. If you and I sign a private contract and it's spelled C-U-P, it's between you and I, and this is now a C-U-P, not a P-E-N. So we agree on what the alphabet is, how to spell it. Now we have to give it a definition. What are the terms? The term is that it's going to be used for writing. And that's going to be what the definition is on our contract. However, if I take the pen and I make a fist around it, it's now a stabbing tool, a concealed weapon, and I'll be arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. It's how you use something which makes a determination as to what the definition of it is. But according to our communications, this is going to be a pen, and so we have a contract of this object. Now, who owns it? Is it for your pen, for her pen, for my pen, for his pen? If I change the ownership of Lodio, I'm going to change the definition of where this belongs. So how do I establish this to be a fact? We have the alphabet, how to spell it, what the object looks like under descriptive definition, who owns it, and now we have a fact, and we call that a positional Lodial fact phrase. So that every word has 900 definitions as a fact. And if we have 900 definitions, 900 ways to certify this to be the fact of ownership, then we have a correct phrase. When you put correct phrases together, then you get into the multiples of order of operations of sentence structure, 900 times 900 times 900 times 900 times 900, and you get into 5.4 gigabytes or billion just with 6 words. And when you're talking that kind of variables on one sentence, and you go with a 7th word or an 8th word or 9th word, now you're into terabytes of information for just one sentence. Huh? Well, in our technology, it's accurate to the terabyte level. Every sentence has a terabyte of information in it, and it's accurate to that level. And that's where the judges can't get around that. So that speaks, see, this course is written on a 29 reading level, folks. High school is 12. Bachelor degree is 16. Graduate is 18. PhD is 20. And we're writing and reading on a 29 reading level. That's why you guys get headaches and you get yourself so wrapped around this thing. Those of you that quit school and never went to school or home studied, whatever, you weren't dumbed down. You don't have that handicap that everyone else had, and you have a great, that's why you failed English, because they couldn't dumb you down. When I was 10, 11 years old, I went to an Amish Quaker and Mennonite school. Had an English teacher who was a Quaker, and she taught prepositional phrases. When I went back to the English schools in Milwaukee, this was in Indiana, in America, in a farming community, and then when I went back to the English schools, they said I was mentally retarded because I couldn't read and write in adverb verb, and I only wrote in prepositional phrases. So they put me in special reading courses trying to dumb me down to an adverb verb scenario. And I knew how to break this stuff down when I was 11 years old and tear it apart. And I said, I won't create a lie. I won't participate the way you guys wanted to. I went through high school with honors. I was on A honor roll. I went through 17 years of college and had A's and B's while working. And I wasn't going to take a backseat to anything. And then last year in September, I took a first year Business Law 101 with 3 PhDs and all the information I know as a judge. Well, about a third week of school, it was divulged that I was a United States Federal District Court judge. They figured that out from the answers I was given in class, which were above even the teacher's communication skills. And when I wrote my first thesis paper on syntax, the teacher said he never even heard the word syntax, and he was the dean of the business college for 29 years. I'm going, how do you be 55 years old and dean of a college and don't even know what the word syntax means? What does that say about America's teachers? That was really sad. I had to stay after class for an hour and teach this guy about syntax. And then when I syntaxed his lesson program, he goes, oh my God, he says, I'm lying to the students. I can't do my job anymore. I got to make a living. He says, well, I guess you got to come to court and come to class every day and lie to us. Yes.
Now, on the side of being correct, we need to fix the car is for the driving. So that should be a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Okay. Yep, that's right. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2.
And what we're trying to demonstrate is that
the last
the
word
is for
driving,
the
ing words are verbs.
the is for the is also a 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. It could also be
The 1, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4, 1, 2.
or it could be a 4, 1, 1, 2, 1, 2.
Adverbs modify adverbs. See, when you're dealing with an illusion, the subjective interpretation of where you put value or the weight of that word, where you put the emphasis on that word, is going to make a determination how it is. That's why Bill Clinton, when he said, what is, he paused. When he said, what is, he did adverb verb. Or he did pronoun adverb, and then he said, is, with emphasis, which means I'm making it a fact. Because he's saying the definition of is in the dictionary is a noun because it determines the condition of state of the definition. And so he was using it actually under subjective interpretation as a verb, adverb, and as a noun. And the judge didn't want to get into a syntax discussion about breaking down and getting into a syntax argument of how many times or how many ways the word is could be defined, and then prove through subjective interpretation what the value of that word is. He had to vacate the case. And Bill Clinton gets away with a demur because he knows, because Clinton was a student of mine for 2 years going into the trial. That's why I was hired as his counsel. And when it came time to go in front of Congress, it was real easy. Just hold up a dollar bill, disqualify currency in 150 countries. And when Hillary got to be Secretary of State, hey, Obama, you just inherited 11% unemployment in the United States and a world in a depression. Try doing it without money. Do the math. Right? Squeaky wheel gets the oil. Okay. Going back to...
You're suggesting something.
Well, you guys can do the math on that, okay? Adjective, coloring. Adjective always modifies the pronoun. Adverbs modify the adjective, which modifies the pronoun. And an adverb can make several. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and say, the David Wynn Miller syntax. The would be an adverb, David would be an adjective, Wynn would be an adjective, Miller would be an adjective, syntax would be a pronoun. That's where you put a string of names together. Corporations may have 5 or 6 names in there. Law firms might have 5 or 6 names. That's where you're going to have a bunch of adjectives in front of the last one would be in a pronoun. Where's my prepositional phrase to certify the value of any word? As long as you're going to have a condition of color, it doesn't exist because it's an opinion. Now the pronoun is any word that stands alone. Pen is a pronoun because there's no contract to make a determination as to what this means. If I ask you for a pen you're going to give me an object, pull out a ballpoint pen. However, you ask me for a penny, and because you speak Maori, I'm going to reach in my pocket and pull out a penny, which is coinage. Does 2 plus 2 equal 4? See, he's saying pen to me, but I'm hearing penny, just like 2, T-O, or T-O-O, or T-W-O. So you've got to be able to communicate with somebody and have a contract to do so. That's why so it is written, so it shall be done, because the oral communications are not what you think they are. The position, as I explained before, is the terms of what your contract is. And once you have your terms of your contract established, we then can have the lodial ownership, which is original. And with these two together, we now have a fact. And once we have a fact, it will become the positional lodial fact phrase. And then you have past time. Past time would be words that end in ed, or the adverb from, or the prepositional phrase from. Either way, you are removed from now time. There is no such thing as the past or the future. There is only now time. You will always be in now time. When you correct the Bible, the Quran, the Masonic codes, you have to translate it to now time, because this is where you're going to be living and working with this technology. The future is a crapshoot. Hasn't happened yet. We'll figure that out when we get there. So it doesn't happen. And the conjunction is and or. And again, and or you have to define. It's not a presumption. The word and by itself is not a conjunction because it doesn't attach to anything. It's a pronoun. Or is the same thing. It's a pronoun unless you take jurisdiction for it. Every word that you use on your papers, you must define those. If you want to and or as a conjunction and a is and a are as a verb, you have to separate a definition under your abbreviations and say these words mean these things and put it right up there at the beginning of the document. That way a judge can't say, that's going to be used for the and. If I say for the and, now you've made a noun out of it. Or the and. Does an adverb making and a verb? I changed it again. Take jurisdiction for how you use it. Okay. Not for storyline. We'll go back to this now. Okay. Okay, now, this is a sentence, but I'm writing this sentence in the form of a graph. Because your mind is a mathematical configuration, a graph is very easy for you to comprehend. So, we're going to say, for the witness, well, we won't use the witness, we use the word claimant. Whenever you start a sentence, write a contract, make any kind of claim, you have to say you have knowledge about what you are doing. There, now it won't move. Of the facts. Is and are equals your thinking capacity. With the claim. Now, yeah, Dave. The claim, you've got, this is a cause. This is an effect. Thinking is your action. This is your possessive. Now, what is the claim? You have two things. You have a plus and you have a minus. Claim, this is going to be a term. These are going to be the terms, not a definition, because definition, DE, means no, fine, contract. because everything was written in adverb verb. The definitions in all dictionaries are written in adverb verb. So we went to the word terms. So once you establish the claim, you have to establish if that a positive claim or a negative claim. And then you have to go ahead with the contract. And what this is going to be the correct sentence, structure, communication, syntax, language, contract. And then the last thing is going to be by the author. Now, author, authority, authentic, authorization, first two letters, AU. What's the symbol for gold on a periodic table? AU. And if you have a sign, simulation, signature, it's a simulation, SI. That's why they always tell you put your signature down, write it in cursive, because now it's a simulation, SI. That's why they always tell you put your signature down, write it in cursive, because now you're signing a simulation to an adverb verb contract, and you're participating in the fraud by your own simulation. Now, I don't know if you guys have to sign your tax forms here in Australia, but isn't it in a box, just like ours are in the United States? Yep. So you're the only, this is, the taxation program worldwide is you have to give them something and a signed receipt that says you're giving it to them, but they don't give you a receipt back or any evidence that you paid. They just kind of leave you alone if you participate. So I'm telling everybody, for those that are government agents, if you're here, that pay your taxes with the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax. And pay your taxes because you're not smart enough not to. And the IRS came back to me and says, you're a tax protester. You're telling everybody to pay your taxes with the correct sentence structure, communication, syntax. I'm going, yeah, and how does that make me a protester? He says, because we don't have any correct sentence structure. I said, oh, you just confessed to that you have a lie. And I'm telling you to be correct, and you're confessing to me that you're a liar. That you're extorting money through a lie. And this is right? Well, you're not going to arrest us, are you? So, now the reason we bring this up, we start every sentence with for because we found that it was the strongest preposition to start a sentence because it takes you into an argument, or takes you into the facts. Of was then used as the for of the effect. We only have two prepositional phrases in front of the verb. And is and are your verbs. I write so fast I don't put the words in. Okay, with the claim, after you have an action of thinking, you have to have a possession. Over here, when you have knowledge, you're human beings. You have a brain. You see things. You witness. And you store information in your brain, just like the computer holds it. But until you hit the execution button to take the information out and move it into sense, you're claiming one thing in your computer. Your brain functions on the same way. You store information from your world experiences, and then you move it through thinking, and you make a claim, which is possessive of that one, of all this knowledge that you've stored up in your head. Then you have to define whether or not that claim, the possessive knowledge that you've claimed, is a plus or minus. Or are you looking for a reward or a damage? Then you have to define how that contract is going to be argued or put to what these terms are. And that's where the whole program comes in, where you're creating this contract. And then somebody has to take responsibility for that sentence. So if you write it backwards, and when you write backwards, this here becomes, these are all separate facts. These stay the same. For the author of the contract, or correct sentence structure, communication, syntax, language, contract, then you would bring your is down with the terms, plus or minus, of the claim, with the facts, by the claimant's knowledge. Backwards, it says the same thing. And I'm using I'm using the opposite prepositions for each one of these words, but each one of these stay the same. With the contract by the author, or with the author by the contract. For the writing of the checks, for the driving of the car of the driving, for the checks by the author. See, frontwards and backwards, there are conditions which are paired, cause and effect, that always stay together. So when you read the sentence backwards, you keep these things together. Now, leaving it as it is, technically you can remove any of these nouns. These are your nouns: author, contract, terms, claim, fact, and claimant's knowledge. You can put those any place, move all the terms around, and the sentence will still mean the same thing. So there's 6 different ways you can write the sentence forwards, and 6 different ways you can write it backwards, and it will still say the same thing. If you can't obstruct the meaning of something, it is what it is. And that's the unique thing that I can prove when I write my lawsuits. And if you can write the sentence backwards and it means the same thing as you wrote it frontwards, now you know you did it correctly.
David, before you go, if I can ask a question, just a couple of people asked me a couple of different things and you might be able to enlighten them.
Sure.
They're wondering how you can make the claims that you make regarding the Universal Postal Union.
Sure.
And if they were going to research that, where they would look to find the information that you have that the Universal Postal Union controls the planet.
Oh, Universal Postal Union was established in 1873 by using a 2-cent postage stamp. All 250 countries treated with the Universal Postal Union, Bern, Switzerland, to transport vessels between transport letters between point A and point B. But when they wrote the treaty up, it was to transport vessels. Everybody in this room is a vessel. All cargo is a vessel. Everything that moved then under a 2-cent postage stamp fell under this jurisdiction. Now, think about 1873. How efficient were we at moving things around? Well, we had steam was just first coming in, so transportation was highly limited. The amount of commerce that was going to flow between one country and the other was very limited, and all they had to do was wait for 1 year until everybody on the planet signed up. As soon as everybody was under contract, jack up the rates. Now that they gave them jurisdiction, they were in charge of vessels. All vessels have to move under commerce, and all commerce is called script, better known as money. In order to get the money, paper money, you have to file bankruptcy, give up your gold, your silver, and take paper. Paper was more convenient to move back and forth. Or have contracts, better known as checks, money orders, which are all controlled by the post office. So this is how they got their fingers into every pie on the planet and became the central bank. Through the post office controls all banking. Benjamin Franklin of the United States. When the Continental Congress got together, Ben was a French attorney working for the English crown to capture America. 1775, he sits back and says, hey, I'll be responsible for contracts and script. He writes the contracts in adverb verb, and he takes control of the money. Walks the United States into a bankruptcy and turns it over back to England. Yeah, we win the war, but we lose it on paper. And we're in bankruptcy with England for 210 years, and they're in control. If you go to the upu.com website, you'll have about 80 pages of reading on the history of the Universal Postal Union, and it'll explain how they came about. And it's all public record. Wikipedia is another one where you can go onto and look up things. You can get well, you guys wouldn't have the privilege, but I got to have the privilege of going into the 5th basement below the Pennsylvania Historical Library and getting into archive books that were 200-300 years old in controlled environments, and having the power to syntax all the old 200-300-year-old scripts and then put the missing words in to tell me secrets that nobody knew about. And I accumulate all this information, whether it be postal, congressional, government, metallurgy, science, nuclear. I study all that stuff. I'm an information junkie, and I cross-reference things. When I get into seminars, I meet people, and I got people that are in all these different branches of government worldwide. And every now and then somebody finds a little secret out, and they call me up and say, hey, Dave, I know the secret. What does it mean? We exchange information. I go someplace else, and I get another piece of information, another piece of information, another piece. Collectively, you create a storyline of who's in charge and what's happening. There's one thing, liars figure, but figures don't lie. And the mathematical interface unlocks this, and when I can write the sentence frontwards and backwards, and it shows the absolute proof of what's happening, and it's the same worldwide, I have my proof. Somebody says, show me the law that says a vowel and 2 consonants means no contract. Look up every word in the English language, it'll prove itself. It isn't where there's a written law to that effect. It's just that the word no is a negative condition of state. Without, under, un, or de, or ab, all your prefixes, all negative conditions of state. If you have anything that is negative, you can't create it. It's a negative contract. If you put no in front of any word that's a fact, why would you put no in front of a fact? It's a no fact. Therefore, you have a no person. What is a no person? Every law in America and here in Australia says no person shall. No is an adverb making person to be a verb, and shall is an adverb in future time, which means you don't exist in now time, and at the same time they all called you guys no persons, which means you're not corporations, because what do you have to have a corporation? 2 or more people in a quantum contract on a single piece of paper. And if it's written in adverb verb, you don't have a contract, therefore you're not a person. You're all individual sovereigns, because there's no contract to tie you with anything except your presumptuous or illusionary opinion. And if you are not a fact and you are a sovereign means one. One is not corporate, and one is a nude person in the middle of the ocean, part of the food chain. Have fun trying to get to the grocery store to buy your groceries before you get eaten by the sharks. And the sharks are everywhere. Because if you're weak, society says that the strong will always harvest the weak, and the 3% will always manage the 97%. Because they're weaker in mind than the 3% that are in control.
Can I get you to clarify that statement of no person shall? Are you trying to say that such a contract or such a command, whether it be an act or a law, it's talking about something other than a sovereign, something other than a human being? It's specifically discussing a dead entity. So the law is for a dead entity. Or the
Aren't you a dead entity on your driver's license? Aren't you capitalized as a nom de guerre?
Well, I have no proof of that. I only know what I've been told, and I have done some research to find out whether capital letters means that there's a dead entity. I haven't found anywhere written where a confirmation of that.
Go down to your local cemetery. Every name on the tombstones is capitalized. Ask the cemetery or go to a funeral home and ask the funeral home director, what does it mean to be capitalized? He says, you're a dead person.
Can you give me something other than the
And if you're
cemetery?
a dead person, you're a no person. And if you're a no person, you have constitutional rights.
Is that written anywhere, that capitals equals a dead entity?
Yeah, nom de guerre.
Okay.
Look up under Styles Manual, capitalized names,
Thank
dead
you.
corporations. Chapter 1, Title 1, Paragraph 1 of the United States of all maritime codes, all vessels must have capitalized names. First rule of contract is closure. You must give closure for your contract. And what is closure? It's the least common denominator of 1. You can only have one jurisdiction, one term of communications between 2 people. You can't have 2 ideas. That's closure. And once you have closure, and 2 people agree on closure, you have contract of 1. You see, 5 plus 5 equals 9. I thought I'd get you on that one too. Oh, I'm sorry. I write too fast sometimes. Dead corporation. Which is paper, which is person. Okay. Okay. Mathematics. Better known as the quadrahedron. Smallest of all geometrical shapes has a four-sided pyramid, correct? The object within the center of that pyramid is point number 5. If you take two objects with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. 5 plus 5 equals 9, better known as tetrahedron, or the Star of David. And who's in charge of contract and banking? The Jewish religion, who uses Star of David as their symbol, which is contract. I offered, you accepted, we have a compliance of 1 tetrahedron with 9 points of reference. Because two objects can't occupy the same place at the same time, therefore when a husband and wife get married, they become one person under the law. Right? And no matter what happens to one, the other one gets it.
You lost me.
I did? Are you married? Everybody that's married is laughing.
They've got it. On record?
Yeah, that's on the record. Okay, what's your question?
The question is, how do you get 5 plus 5 equal 9 with
I just explained it to you.
with a
It's geometry. Two objects cannot occupy the same space at the same time. What is a piece of paper? It's corporate. Isn't there only one sheet of paper in my hand?
Yes, you're holding a piece of paper.
Okay. And the two people that came together on this are called the United, or three people, I got 3 witnesses on here called the United States. These
Right.
3 people joined together on one sheet of paper for one idea.
Right.
Their 3 ideas form one contract.
Right.
It's one contract, not 3 contracts, but one. It's unity. It's the United States of the claim of the life.
It's a simple enough concept.
And because the claim of the life has a stamp endorsed, name of flag, to advertise the terms of the contract under law of the flag, an endorsement on the back of the document becomes a negotiable instrument, and the terminology written here in 4 paragraphs, or 4 sentences, articulate in now time, prepositional phrase, order of operations that this individual, Stephen, knows how to read and write in syntax, identifies himself to be a fact, his mother and father to be a fact, who created him as a fact, and he has 2 witnesses who also have claims to the life, which are facts, to certify and notarize this document that it is a fact.
Right.
And only a fact can notify a fact. And anytime you have 3 people that don't have a claim of the life and you want to make one, AB certifies C. 2 always certify 1. That rule is as old as writing. And AC certifies B and BC certify A. And that's how you get to have a claim of the life through spontaneous combustion.
And what that has to do with the 5 plus 5 equal 9?
It has to do with the fact that we are several people coming together on a contract, but it is one contract, not 2 contracts. There is a continuance of evidence, better known as corporation. This is a corporation entity now.
Now, just you're looking for further evidence of you being dead? There you
Once,
go.
yes.
All the proof you need's in there.
Oh, the phone book.
The 5 plus 5 equal 9. Well, I won't be sleeping tonight.
See, you're going over here like this, and you're going down here, which is this. When the 2 of them come together, they overlay each other. And you have 1 point here and 1 point here, which is the center of the cube, or the mass. And when you put them together, they both occupy the same space, creating 1. That's how the government takes marriage and turns it into 1 for taxation purposes. That a husband and a wife are married. Boyfriend and girlfriend are still 5 plus 5 equals 10, and are treated as separate entities. Once they get married and they become the 1 under contract, because the marriage contract unifies them, then the government treats them, if one gets damaged, the other one's responsible, and vice versa. If one does something wrong, they're both guilty.
Say 5 plus 1 equals 9? Or
5 plus 5 equals 9.
9.
Because it's one entity now. It's this entity here, the center of both, that becomes one, because two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time.
Why 9?
Because I got 5 here and 5 here, and when I put them together, you've got 4 points on the outside of your triangle and 1 point in the middle, correct? And when you put the 2 points together, the 2 inside points overlay each other and can't occupy the same space. Therefore, there's only 9 points. One is dissolved because they come together, called unity or marriage. And 5 plus 5 equals 9 in quantum physics. That's why this is a quantum communication program. It deals with contract.
Because of the overlay and the 2 points that are on the
Exactly. And the whole world, every government functions on the same rules and regulations, including the post office. And all the Masons have used this technology since the beginning of Masonry 8,500 years ago. That's why marriage has always been insisted upon by all cultures, all governments, worldwide. It's boys and girls, you know.
My question sort of goes back to earlier on in the day when you were talking about Rothschild. Now, when you say that he sort of is allowing it to come into existence because it's going to make him more money, is it also the fact that if he's going to make more money, he's allowed to, or him and the elite are allowed to keep the money they've already made by doing the wrong thing, but they now become protected with this new language, you know, and they can also make more money off the money they get to keep without ever being brought to justice on what they've done?
The machine started a long time ago, okay? We're going to go back in history. For 6,000 years, everything that went from China to Europe, because the Americas weren't involved with paper money, dealing with contract, gold, silver, bartering with different silks and blankets and everything else, everything went through Istanbul, which was Persia. The Persians went ahead and captured, through taxation of going through their country, money for 6,000 years. When the Vatican came into being in 79 AD, they went ahead and they borrowed money from Persia to build the Catholic religion and the Catholic Church. That's why you have Persian architecture on all the churches. I'm a key master, and so is Russell Gould. We are the only 2 key masters worldwide, because we are the syntax, mathematical syntax correct individuals, which are under contract with the Vatican to translate and syntax the Bible and all their symbolizations that they have, and do it through mathematics. We know the secrets. And that's a whole different area of seminar information on a need-to-know basis.
Okay.
And deals with banking too, and international trade agreements and treaties with the UN and other countries. The history then moves forward from 79 AD to 1750. The Rothschild family goes to Persia and they borrow money. They never paid it back. 1800 comes along, and Rothschild, through passenger pigeons, controls all the banking in the 5 capitals of Europe. And through passenger pigeons, nobody knows how they're doing it, because they keep this as a family secret for 50 years, transport information back and forth, and so they got 80% of all banking in Europe is locked up with the 5 brothers. Then Napoleon comes along, and Napoleon is goes up against Cromwell at Waterloo. Rothschild knows by passenger pigeon 2 hours before when he's defeated, knows that the London Stock Exchange everything is being traded, currently trading at about 10 cents on a dollar. Then word comes that Napoleon won, and it drops to 2 cents on a dollar, but Rothschild knows that Napoleon lost.
Yep.
So he goes ahead and he buys up 80% of everything. Beg, borrow, cheat, and steal, and he buys up everything on margin. And when the news is announced 2 hours later that the war is over, the stock market jumps 500% instantly, and he becomes the richest man in the world. And then he says to everybody, you can have all the money you want, but you're going to separate the prepositional phrase into adverb verb, which means all contracts are destroyed. He never pays back Persia. So England now, this goes along from 1800 for 100 years. And of course the interest is accumulating, and along comes Lawrence of Arabia. Peter O'Toole made the movie, Lawrence of Arabia. But what you don't know is the classified document as to who Lawrence of Arabia was. He was a secret agent to go in and break up Persia. Became Turkey, Iran, Iraq, the Arab Republic, Dubai, and all those areas. And Persia got broke up because they wanted to go in there and get the notes. They didn't get the notes. 1973 comes along, we have the Persian Gulf War. You go in there with our big bombers and blow up things trying to get the notes. They didn't get the notes then either. We're back over there again, still looking for the notes. Persia's still sitting, or the Iraq, now it's in Iran. And we're not Iran, but Iraq. No, Iran. Iran's holding the notes right now. They've already stripped. Now they figured it out that everything's being held in Baghdad. The notes are. But to go to war with Iran would be kind of stupid because it's 4 times bigger than Iraq. And Russia isn't going to allow that to take place. It's one thing to where it's at now, but India and Russia, that's too close. You got Pakistan, we're in Afghanistan. The resources of the world are kind of running thin. The war is not accepted. Quantum languages disqualifying all the lies that are taking place. The secrets of the manipulation and conspiracy theories are coming out through these programs that have been advertising with forensic evidence and proof. So the notes are still there, and Persia has a 250-year interest compounded, which is about $1,000 trillion right now against the entire English world. So if the notes are ever published, it could cause somewhat of a global problem.
Right.
So there's your motivation right there. Okay, this is your title. In the contract states it's DI, which is original, strict is jurisdiction, court of the Australian territory. TER is terra. ORY is contract. So that's how you, this is the title you put on your paperwork. When you file in the United States District Court, it means United is no citizen, States, District is demon god of the underworld for trickery in a closed area called court. You make a presumption and you're going to be tricked. And when you file this, they're going to go ballistic on you, but this is where you're at. This is the correct title. Don't forget, what you put on your paperwork is the contract of what the court is going to be. If you want to call it a demon god court, you're going to be treated like a trick. You're going to be denied things. And if you use the correct sentence structure, you're going to get correct sentence structure. Truth in, truth out. Fiction in, fiction out. That's another statement. You guys have all your adhesive contracts you've made since you were 18 years old are in adverb verb fiction. You believed and gave value to that fiction because you were entered into commercial, used money to give it value. And your contract has proved that that illusion you gave value to, whether it be a mortgage, a car payment, your driver's license, marriage contracts, divorce contracts, all these things, fiction in, fiction out. You can't change boats in the middle of the stream. You're going to fall in the water. So now that you learned syntax, you can go back and you can write correct sentence structure, communication, syntax contracts. And when you enter into those are legitimate. One of my, I used to have a real estate company for 26 years. I bought and sold homes, did renovations and stuff. I have 3 PhDs right now, 535 college credits. I'm a little overeducated in a lot of things. Went to college, full-time college for 17 years. The contracts that we created, or my mortgage contracts I wrote myself. They're 2 pages long, and they are totally in syntax. And when the people people who wanted to buy the houses didn't understand it, they would take it to a lawyer. And the lawyer would say, if you don't want this house, I'll buy it. This is a real contract. And just to get his hands on a real contract, he knew what he could do with it. He could sell the information to other real estate companies, as well as write quantumized language to get into private business. Now, you guys are probably all focused on how this thing is going to affect in court. When you get into corporate writing, corporate charters, you're not in a court system. Corporation to corporation, writing treaties, trusts, and contracts for corporate international banking. Right now, we've got several programs running under international banking, which are in their 10th year right now. So when you get into, we're trying to get the entire planet. We have treaties with 82 countries right now in quantum banking. We have a 117-page quantum bank trust that I served at the United Nations with the embassies. And I have, my ambassadorship comes from both the syntax of the language. I'll explain that to you now. When I got my ambassadorship, the first thing I did was I captured the flag of America by syntaxing the definition of the flag. I then challenged the Congress, the Senate, the legislature, and the Supreme Court of the United States for anybody to have the correct sentence structure, communication syntax, oath of office, to be who they are in that department, and to come forward with the representation to defend the flag of the United States of America. Nobody showed up after the 10-day rule, and the United Nations, because I was the first person to quantumize the definition correctly in now time of the flag, I now own the patents to the flag of the United States of America. When Obama took office, the flags that flew behind him in the White House were 1 to 2.25. The constitutional flag that I copyrighted is 1 to 1.9. That was the flag of the United States since 1906. And when I went ahead and I captured it, the United States then took and made all flags yellow fringe. So they went ahead and they said, the post office, all yellow fringe flags worldwide, you even have your British yellow fringe flag, those are postal flags. You work for the post office or you're in postal jurisdiction under the port authorities when you see those. So when I got that, then they said, well, if you have a flag, you must have a country, and a country has to have a constitution. We supplied them with a syntax constitution, the same ones that are up on the internet right now. And then they said, well, you have a constitution, a flag, and there's 2 or more people, and you're on the gold standard. What country do you declare? I declare the land of the courtroom during time of contract, which has never been claimed by any country in the history of mankind. And it's because I was the first person to have the correct sentence structure for the definition of the laws, rules, regulations, and description of what a courtroom is, knowing that it does not exist as a geographical room, but the paper that holds the words of the contract. That is the courtroom. That's why 9 out of 10 of your cases are solved under summary judgment when you file your lawsuit. And the judge makes a determination without you being in court. Because it's the paper is the court. The paper has all the names on. The paper is the United States. And knowing all these different facts and where things are supposed to belong, the United Nations voted 199 to nothing that I own the flag, that I am a sovereign, that I have an ambassadorship as the correct sentence structure, communication syntax country, better known as the Unity States of our World Corporation. And Jeff Skiba and I, because it's 2, make corporate. Because we're in a corporate world as corporate, and we are in fact with one gold ounce, we're now on the gold standard. But we don't have to pay the $1.6 million a year membership fee for the United Nations. We have standing at the UN. The reason we don't have to pay that is because all money is fiction, and we're a fact. And the fact and the fiction can never meet. In front of the UN building in New York City, there are 200 flags. There is one, Title IV, not Title IV, that's what we used to call it, but now it's the correct sentence structure communication syntax flag, measures 1 to 1.9, and there are 199 3x4 military boat flags to represent vessels in dry dock of a foreign country at the UN building. Now, when you go in front of all of the UN embassies, and there's separate compartments over on in the different hotels that surround the UN building where they have their embassies, they all fly yellow fringe flags with spears on top and gold braids, which means they're under maritime military bankruptcy or is a military issue. And of all the ambassadors I spoke with, not one of them knew what their flags meant. And when they saw how many different flags they had, one down in the foyer, one outside the building, one in their office, they didn't know what they meant. It's kind of embarrassing that you're ambassador of a country and you don't even know what your own flag means.